Salve, and welcome back to 15 with Fosca, the podcast. This episode is the first in a special series dedicated to young voices from Italy, Giovani Voci dall'Italia. The series strives to give space and a platform to a new generation and connects listeners to what they're feeling, thinking, and saying, and to what's important to them at this moment in time. In today's episode, I chat with my daughter and nephew about identity, stereotypes, and representations of Italianness and Americanness. We also dedicate time to the differences between the two countries, with a specific emphasis on high school and college. Grazie mille e buon ascolto.
Buongiorno mondo.
Buongiorno mondo.
Buongiorno mondo, and welcome back to 15 with Fosca, the podcast. I am so happy today to be sitting here in New Jersey on what is my last full day in the United States of summer 2023. And I'm here with my daughter, Giada. Say hi.
Hi.
And my nephew, Sam.
Ciao.
And we have been spending a lot of time together this summer. Sam is heading off to college in just a week or so, and Giada and I are heading back to Florence. And we've been talking a lot about identity, and it was actually Sam who suggested that we do this podcast episode together to sort of talk about his experience here in the States as an Italian American, as a student of the Italian language, and Giada's experience as half Italian, half American growing up in Florence. So they're sort of living opposite experiences. And we thought it would be fun to have a little chat today about young people in general and about identity and just how they feel growing up in the world today in terms of that connection that they both have. Giada on the one hand to the U.S. When she's in Italy, and of course Sam's sort of quest for his cultural identity. So I just want to dive right in, and I think we should just start talking about, I'm going to ask the first question to Sam, about why you chose to study the Italian language today.
The main reason I chose to study Italian is honestly, it's because of my family. It's because of the desire I had to become closer to my family, not just, personally and emotionally, but culturally, and to be better able to understand them, literally, obviously. You and Giada live in Italy. Most of my family speaks Italian. And so for me, it was really an effort to get closer to that side of the family and have a better understanding of that side of the family and, in a way, get closer to understanding myself through that.
Mm-hmm. And do you think you're going to continue studying, obviously, Italian when you go to college, but do you think that the study of the language has helped you understand the Italian culture better, or that part of yourself?
I think as I've gotten better with the language, it has given me a little bit more insight into myself. And I think I was taught a lot about culture in my Italian classes at school, but it made me realize, I guess in a way, that the Italian culture is something more, I guess, separate from myself than, what I thought. Because it's not, it's culture. It's not something that's just in your blood from me being Italian. Mm-hmm. I am, American through and through, born and raised here. And it made me realize, okay, I'm not really Italian in that way, but it gave me an opportunity to sort of try to gain an understanding of that, try to gain an understanding of being Italian, even if I don't think you can really be Italian without living it.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. And I think there's often this misconception about what Italy looks like today, especially for those of us who are Italian Americans, because we have the Italian culture as it's sort of been preserved, for the past couple of 100 years or something. So sometimes there's not really an understanding of what Italy looks like today, but more like what Italy looked like maybe when our great-grandparents came over, our great-great-grandparents in your cases. And on that note, I want to turn it over to Giada just for a second about how you feel when you're here, also being an Italian who also has U.S. citizenship, who comes to the U.S. and spends significant amounts of time here every year, but how people relate to you when you say, oh, I'm an Italian and I live in Florence. How do people respond to that?
Okay. I guess there's a lot of stereotypes obviously surrounding being Italian and just living in Italy and how the culture is to this day. Sometimes I think people sort of assume that Italy is like this whole other world when it's really not. There's so many similarities between Italy and the States. I mean, Italy has gone a long way since when our great grandparents came from Italy to the States. And I think that people are still stuck in how Italy was at the time and how, like, oh, there wasn't any like different foods, like there wasn't any like American food in Italy or Chinese food or Japanese food. But now Italy has evolved so much into this multicultural place, and it's just so beautiful, and there's so many different people, and I just think that there's a lot of stereotypes surrounding Italy that are often just wrong and kind of annoying sometimes when people address them to me, because I think that Italy is this beautiful place that has come a long way since my great grandparents left Italy. So just that, I guess, a lot of stereotypes that still surround my country.
Yeah. And I think, that's a lot of it is due to globalization in general, sort of the way the world is going. We could sit here and talk about migrants, immigration, what's going on in Italy today, also on a deeper level. I think, though, as an Italian American, for me, what I see or what I've even experienced, when I say I live in Italy, people just assume that my life is like under the Tuscan sun, which I wish it were, but it isn't. So I think people have this idea, I don't know, that I'm just sitting around all day, drinking Aperol Spritz and, sitting, on the beach and living the dolce vita, which I would really be happy to do. But, we do work and have problems and things it's a normal place. I remember one time being here in New Jersey, maybe, I don't know, Giada, maybe you were small, and I went into an Italian store, a local Italian store, so like an Italian American deli type place. And I remember when I said to the owner that I lived in Italy, he started speaking to me in dialect, in Barese dialect, and I did not understand a word. And I was embarrassed because for him, that was his Italian language. And it's, the dialect from Bari. But I was like, what? It was a whole different language. So even something like that, I think for you, Sam, reckoning with what you've experienced as an Italian American with the reality of Italian culture today, which you get through me and through Giada, but you also got it through your Italian language classes, and also because you're naturally intellectually curious, so you read a lot, you know what's going on in the world, and you know what Italy looks like today. So I guess I would ask you, Sam, and then you, Giada, because I think that it's fun to talk about stereotypes, because I think it also helps us gain deeper insight and knowledge, right? So, Sam, what do you think stereotypes of Italians are here in the U.S.? Not Italian Americans. Like, when you talk about Italy, like, what do people think?
You see, it's interesting because, and this applies to a lot of countries, for the United States, there's this odd dichotomy of a romanticism and also, like, I don't know how to put it, like, sort of push it, like, in the United States, there's this, I guess, odd view sometimes of other countries that they're either these, like, romantic paradises, like you talked about, like,
Right.
under the Tuscan sun, while at the same time viewing a lot of other countries as being terrible, not nearly as good as the United States. So for Italy, it's this odd contradiction of, the stereotype of it being like this, like, mafioso, very, heavy crime, I guess in a way sort of like crude place, but also this place of high culture and this romantic, beautiful image of Italy and its vibrant culture as this amazing, wonderful thing, but at the same time being this crude, crime-ridden underbelly. And I think that's true of a lot of countries, but I think Italy is one of the big ones where it's a sort of strange contradiction of stereotypes, and it depends really on who you ask. I've heard stereotypes of people, the accent, the bada biga, the bada boom,
Right.
Whatever, and pizza pasta, whatever. But there's a strange combination of that negativity and also of that like romanticism that pervades it.
Yeah, and maybe that kind of contradiction does exist in every culture, but I think because also of where we are geographically, I mean, New Jersey has such a high population of Italian Americans as well. And so I think when people think of Italy, they often think of the way Italy has been, sort of the way it has come through thanks to Italian American culture. So unfortunately, those negative images of the mafia, for example, or the whole way the Italian food culture has evolved into a true Italian American food culture. I think those are things that are familiar here, and so people go back to those because maybe that's the only knowledge they have of the country.
I think also that's a reflection, I guess, of the north-south divide within
For
Italy.
sure.
Because if you look, most of the Italian Americans, at least in this area, New Jersey, most of them are Neapolitan or Sicilian, I would say. I know, I mean, half the people I talk to are like, oh, you're Italian American, where's your family from? Avellino, me too.
Right.
That's half the interactions I have with people. And so I think a lot of the bad stereotypes tend to come from sort of the South Italian experience, whereas there's this kind of romanticism for a lot of the North Italian, like, when you talk to people about like Naples, they'll be like, oh, Naples, the coast is so pretty, but you gotta watch out in Naples. You gotta
Right.
watch out in Naples.
Right.
But if you talk to somebody about Milan, they'll be like, oh my god, I love Milan. I love the fashion. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. They talk about Milan as if it's like the greatest paradise in the history of man. So I think it really, that divide is really reflected even in America, where we don't really understand the North-South divide, you can still see its reflection in Italian Americans.
And I also think that like it's the depiction of Italian Americans in popular culture in this country has been so strong. And so you think about everything from, movies like The Godfather to a TV series like The Sopranos, and I'm just naming very few, but to also major artists who have embraced their Italian American identity, anyone from Madonna to Lady Gaga. And so representations of Italianness come to us in these diluted or somehow at least transformed ways. Now I'm curious to hear from Giada what the stereotypes of Americans are in Italy, especially in a city like Florence, which is a difficult city to live in some respects and an easy city to live in for others. But how do you feel being, living in Florence, having been born there and raised there, but with this American identity as well? How do you reconcile that, number one? And two, what do Italians think about Americans?
I mean, being half American has always been part of my identity and who I am, and it's something that that people really like. I think that it sets me apart, and so I get noticed a lot, and people think it's complicated how my relationship through the years evolved with my being half American, because sometimes it made me feel kind of odd. People made me feel kind of odd, I guess, because I spoke American English and I didn't speak Italianized English, which is something really weird to think about how people would judge you on that, but they did, because my English was weird because I had an American accent. And when I was younger, and by younger I mean when I was like 8 or 9, it made me feel really sad sometimes how people would judge my accent, and it made me feel different, and I didn't understand why people were so not mean about it, but didn't understand. But in Italy, there's such a huge there's so many different cultures that now that I'm that I'm more that I grew up, I understand that there's so many different cultures and so many different people that I met that have two ethnicities like I do, and I don't feel as different anymore. The thing that probably sets me apart from other people, I'd say, is especially in school when we're in English class, because obviously I have an American accent, and obviously the teachers notice that, and my classmates notice that, and so they ask me for help, which I do love to do, but sometimes that made me feel different, and it bugged me how people would judge how I would say New Jersey, because people in Italian say New Jersey,
Right.
and I say New Jersey, and people would make fun of that, would mimic me, and so I started saying it in the Italianized way because I didn't want people to make fun of me for it.
Right.
And I
You
stopped
also
doing
study.
that.
Well, you also they study British English.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Italy,
Exactly.
and so that's also part of
So
it.
that's what kind of sets me apart. But except for that, it's really like there's so many different people that it's not really anything special. It just made me feel, I guess, a little bit different when I was younger because I didn't fully understand why people were like that. But now that I understand that it's not something to be ashamed of or
Right.
to be embarrassed about. It's a great thing, and it's opened so many doors for me that I'm so grateful for the fact that I'm able to speak two languages fluently, that I'm able to live in two places, that I have a double citizenship. I am so grateful that I'm able to have that opportunity, and I realize that I'm very lucky.
Okay. What do you think, the same way I asked Sam about stereotypes of Italians, what are some stereotypes of Americans? You know, living in a city like Florence, we have a really high population of U.S. college students. We also have just a high population of U.S. visitors coming. How are Americans viewed? You can be
guess,
straight.
yeah.
You guys,
Then
it's an
the
honest
facade-
conversation.
The facade of the ignorant American. The ignorant American that comes to Italy and just doesn't understand the art and is like taking pictures with the David and being vile about it, or vandalizing the Colosseum.
Yeah.
That's what they picture Americans as: ignorant and kind of uncultured, but on this on this front, which I think is really untrue
And unfortunate.
It's really unfortunate because why would we judge a whole country on the actions of a few ignorant people?
Right.
That's not how all Americans are.
Right.
Unfortunately, yes, there are people that go and vandalize the Colosseum, but most of it, it's just like they don't know about Italian art, so why not teach them? Instead of judging them for not knowing some stuff, why not teach them?
Right.
And also, it's not true, because why would we say, oh, they don't know anything about culture, and, you know, they just think about American history and blah, 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 which is untrue.
Sam wants to chime in. I see Sam's like, I'm chomping at the bit. He's like, hold on one second.
Just want to say the Colosseum guy was actually British.
Oh, he was?
he was?
Oh my gosh.
I'm pretty
see?
sure. I'm pretty sure I read he was like an immigrant in the UK. I don't remember where he was from, or his parents. He was like something like that, but he was British.
But see,
That's
we
not
thought,
honest.
but we assumed he was
True.
American. And that's the problematic thing, is
Yeah.
that we should double check that, because I don't remember. It was a few weeks ago. But regardless, that is an image also because of what does go on, unfortunately. I mean, I think it's normal that people, when they're abroad in general, regardless of their country of origin, you almost feel when you're abroad that like nothing you do counts. I don't know how to explain it, but it sort of feels like a freedom from who you really are. And so I think that tends for some people to, let's say, lead them to make not very wise decisions. So I want to go back to talking about some cultural differences. And I have a couple of fun questions that I wanted to ask you guys, both of you. One is, what do you think, Sam, our young Italian listeners out there would be surprised to know about American high school, or even the college application process, or everything that you've just gone through? What would they be surprised to hear you say?
Well, I think, at least from what I've heard from Giada and her describing the Italian education system, is the American education system is, and it is sort of a reflection of American culture, but it's very individualized, I guess, the way it's done. Like, you have to be very good at setting yourself apart is really the goal of a lot of it. And also on top of that, it is a lot more, I guess, boring than it's portrayed in the movies. You know, Hollywood likes to, ratchet things up and make them look like it's this, big grand epic party. But, honestly, it's like other schools. It's a lot of studying. It's a lot of, sitting in class and, your teacher explaining some algebraic equation to you and you're there like, why am I here studying algebraic equations?
Yeah, that's global, honey.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that it's in ways more similar to Italian school than you think, but also it is very different. Like I said, it's more individualized, and I mean that in terms of I think, how do I put this? The way it's the studying. I mean, the education is a lot more general, so it's on you to really specialize yourself.
Yeah.
Rather than in Italy, where you go into the specialized schools for what you want to do in high school. It's your job in American high school to set yourself apart. Like, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to work hard at. This is what I want to specialize myself in. And also, extracurricular activities are such a big deal in American high school. It is the biggest thing. Obviously they have that in Italy as well, but from what I hear, it's not as important as it is in America. In America, extracurriculars, or ECs as we call them now, because everything has to be abbreviated, ECs are everything. Not just for the college rat race, but also just for your social life and who you are, really. Yeah. Those extracurriculars, they mean everything. And most kids are doing 2, 3, 4 different extracurriculars. I mean, me personally, I did Model UN. I did pretty much every kind of band and choir you could imagine. I tried debate, didn't enjoy it that much. I did track for a little bit. I did a variety of different things, and you really have to do a variety of different things nowadays.
I mean, I did too way back in the day. You've always had to. I mean, that's very much a part of the American ethos as well. It's like, our whole college, our whole educational system, the whole idea of a liberal arts college is the antithesis of what the Italian education system is. Thanks again to Giada and Sam for suggesting we do this episode, for such a great talk, and to all of you for tuning in. When we recorded the episode over the summer, I had no idea that scheduling and timing would gift us this episode the day after Thanksgiving. And while I wish we were all together right now, laughing and chatting loudly at table, I am very grateful that we are creating and building community and family here. Finally, I am so appreciative of you, my listeners, for supporting me by subscribing and by tuning in every week. Grazie mille e alla prossima.